Hello. I know you've missed me. I was only gone for a week. Now it's time. Let's get weird. March 24th, 1919 was the day Aaron Kosminski died. And almost exactly 100 years to the day, we've revealed new DNA evidence that might finger him as the actual persona of Jack the Ripper. Dun dun dun! Let me tell you a little bit about the story behind Jack the Ripper, one of the most notorious unsolved serial murders in our history. He stays in our mind, probably because he has a really good tagline, Jack the Ripper. Thank you, newspapers. Your creativity has fueled our nightmares for a century and a half. Here's a little background on Jack the Ripper. In 1881, Whitechapel, London, not the best neighborhood in town. It was for more of the lower class of the time. Also, a lot of migrants that were fleeing Poland, Jewish migrants who were being persecuted by the Russian government and the Bolsheviks at the time, were fleeing and going to London and settling in this particular neighborhood. And not just people from there, but it was pretty much like a migrant destination in London. So you had a lot of different people milling about. And then murders happen. They start finding the bodies of the Ripper's victims in alleyways, in streets in Whitechapel. There are technically only 5 victims that are 100% Jack the Ripper victims, unfortunately. But there are as many as 13 or more that are suspected to actually be Jack the Ripper victims because they were killed in a very similar way. Officially, Jack the Ripper only killed in 1881. Unofficially, the murders continued until 1891. Now, fast forward 100 years to the anniversary of Aaron Kosminski's death. Researchers revealed a paper that they wrote with DNA evidence that he may have in fact been the killer. What's weird about that is there's a lot of controversy because the DNA technology that they used is the mitochondrial DNA. So there's 2 kinds of DNA. And I'll explain that to you. The first kind of DNA only has 2 strands within every cell. And then there's mitochondrial DNA, which you inherit from your matrilineal line. So you got it from your mom got it from her mom got it from her mom, and so on and so forth. Consider it the Eve of DNA. Matrilineal DNA has thousands of copies, and they're actually outside the cell and around the cell and all throughout your body. So there are thousands of them. The only thing is your DNA is distinct, those 2 copies per cell. Matrilineal DNA isn't entirely distinct. So anybody in your family line would shed that same matrilineal DNA. So where did they get the blood or DNA or tissue or hair, which you can get DNA from, for Jack the Ripper? Aaron Kosminski himself didn't have any children, but his sister did. So descendants of his sister came in and donated DNA. So now you're probably wondering, well, where did they get a sample to compare it to? Because that's what you have to do, right? Correct. There is an item in the collection of the scientists who did the study Researchers Jerry Luhinen and David Miller published a paper in the Journal of Forensic Science. They managed to obtain an item that belonged to the last Ripper victim, Catherine Eddowes. Catherine Eddowes is considered the last official Ripper victim and was killed on the same day as Mary Kelly. So this is significant because the Ripper kind of was trying to up his game. He was escalating, as they say, and he was committing more and more murders more frequently, and 2 in one day was like, whoa, what's going on here? So, what do they have? They found a silk scarf that belonged to Catherine Eddowes. The provenance on it is a little squiffy. What that means is they can't actually prove that it was at the murder site or on her body, but there are bloodstains on this silk scarf, and it is beautiful. We'll put a picture of it up so that you can see it. Just like from a textile perspective, because I'm kind of like a knitting and textile nerd, it really is a beautiful scarf, and the fact that they've kept it in such a good condition for so long is a little bit amazing. So why is the provenance a little weird on this? Well, so Catherine Eddowes' DNA was detected on it, also through matrilineal DNA. And then Aaron Kosminski's matrilineal DNA was also discovered, but because they can't prove that the scarf was actually at the murder site or on her at the time, we have no way to conclusively prove that he is in fact Jack the Ripper, because they don't have that concrete distinct DNA. They only have the matrilineal DNA, and due to a weird provenance and the people who've held the scarf over the years, there's no telling how that DNA actually got on there or how that drop of blood got onto the scarf. The testing was actually done 3 years ago, and they waited a little bit to do it. I honestly think it's because it's the anniversary of Aaron Kosminski's death when they released the paper and they released their research. But that is not their official reason. They waited 3 years to release the data so that they would have everything together with their research. Something else weird, if you do go look at the journal, it is the Journal of Forensic Science that the paper is published in. You can get it online with a subscription if your libraries carry that, or if you're in a college, you should be able to access that research paper. And it will have, as all peer-reviewed research papers, not the articles that are written out there in the Science Times and the New York Times and all of those papers, a peer-reviewed magazine like this are available in academic settings, and you should have free access to it. Also, through your public library, if your public library has one of those really nice accounts that gives you the ability to do research on their computers, you should be able to access the original journal. And I suggest that you do, because they did something kind of unusual for an academic paper. They couldn't publish the DNA profiles because it would violate the British version of HIPAA. British privacy laws don't allow you to publish medical or genetic information without permission. They never got the descendants' permission, I'm guessing, because if you get written permission to disseminate that, then you could publish it, but I don't know the exact law. I know how HIPAA here in the United States works, and as long as you have a release that allows you to release that information, you can. But there also might just be like a privacy issue. So what they did was they took the data and they interpreted it into this graphical colored block interpretation of the data instead of actually showing you the DNA strands that they were able to pull out of the samples. They did this, one, because in a research paper you have to show your data or it's just not going to be taken seriously. And two, they figured that this graphical representation of it would actually be easier for people who aren't scientists, who aren't forensic scientists, and who don't know how to interpret those kinds of data markers. And I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing. It's the first time I have heard of them having to do this kind of thing in a medical journal or in a forensic journal like this. So, you know, make sure you get people to sign a release. That's one thing I just gotta say right there. But if the families didn't want that, totally respect it, which they did, and that's good. But it's also weird because then the data is not there for other scientists to evaluate. And what happens with peer-reviewed journals is you publish your article, other scientists look at your data, they look at your research, and then they write basically a rebuttal or a letter confirming or denying what results you got and the conclusions that you came to. And that is how modern science comes to an agreement over something. So there's a few weird things going on here. One, Aaron Kosminski can't be 100% confirmed to be Jack the Ripper. Partially because we don't have his individual distinct DNA. But we do know that somebody in his bloodline who carries his matrilineal DNA touched that scarf at some point, causing the blood stain. We also can't prove that Catherine Eddowes actually had the scarf on or about her or near her at the time of the crime, which makes it very strange because, I mean, they lived in the same neighborhood. They probably knew each other. He was a barber. And it's a little weird because so many people in her family have actually touched and handled the object, the scarf. So their DNA could be contaminating it. It's just kind of a mess of all kinds of issues. And then the research paper can't really be peer-reviewed 100% properly because of privacy laws. So hopefully they can get that sorted out in some sort of way and produce their actual data for people to see. Because that's really important. This is not something that I am trying to overstress. It is a 100% incredibly important part of the research process. And it is how everything gets confirmed and discussed. And if further testing needs to be done, it can be done. It can be done! Anyway, other weird things. Oh my goodness, there were so many suspects in this case. I don't even know how many suspects there were, but let me just read you off a small list of some of the most notable ones. Of course, Aaron Kosminski, a barber. Basically, if you had access to a sharp object, knife, shears, scissors, anything like that, you were suspect number one because of the way the victims died. Aaron Kosminski, barber. Montague Druitt, schoolmaster. Somebody didn't like their schooling. Sewerin Kloski, a barber, and also a confirmed murderer and poisoner later on. It's confirmed that he poisoned 3 women in his life. Michael Ostrog, a con man and a surgeon back in Russia. John Pizer, a bootmaker. You work with leather all day. You're cutting things, you're crafting things. And now we get to some interesting ones. Prince Albert Victor, Duke of Clarence and Avondale. He was a little not right in the head due to a massive case of syphilis. He had it for a very long time. It was really bad and it was affecting his mental stability because they didn't really have 100% treatment of syphilis at the time or at all. The next really out there one, and I love this one, and just because it is really out there. Lewis Carroll. Yes, Lewis Carroll. The author of Alice in Wonderland. People were like, oh wow, He had like a mental breakdown. It was totally Lewis Carroll. Look at his work. He's crazy. He's mad as a hatter. See what I did there? But no, it wasn't Lewis Carroll. But it was interesting that he got brought up in the possible suspects. And this is just a small number of them. If you go online, you can read all the various wikis on it. And there are some other suspected murderers who were active at the time in the same area. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who was also an author, he wasn't a suspect, but he had his own list of suspects, which I found very interesting because they were all women. And his list included convicted murderers, I've got notes here, Mary Percy and Constance Kent, just to name a few. Apparently he had a very long list of possible female murderers that could have been Jack the Ripper. I mean, you know, women's lib or something. I'm not saying that we should go out and commit murders, but it is totally possible that it could have been a woman. Maybe. I don't know. I wasn't there. Or was it? No, I just double checked. No, I wasn't. There are lots of fascinating things about the Jack the Ripper case. The fact that there were letters written later on. Lots of people came forward and tried to say that they were Jack the Ripper. And the number of victims, the graffiti, it was basically the first natural born killers type situation where the news really got behind it and made people so scared and got them like really into following it. And there were people who basically studied it and they put together their own theories like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle did. Here's an interesting fact for you, and it's also a little weird. There are people who only study this case, Jack the Ripper, and they're called Ripperologists. And that's your word for the day. Isn't that weird? Did you like this video? Did I give you the creeps? Did I make you feel tinglies down your back? Well, join us next time for Let's Get Weird. Like, subscribe, comment, click the little bell if you want to get notifications when we post a new video. I like to be a little weird. You should come join me. It's fun on the weird side. I need to be stopped.